Tonight, I will take you on a journey to 16th century Japan. Back when the name Japan had not yet taken root in the world, countless warriors charged across the battlefield, driven by ambition and loyalty. Among them was a man who shone with an extraordinary light. He broke free from rituals and formalities, destroyed outdated customs, and burned down the old order. People called him the Fool, then feared him as the demon king of the sixth heaven, and eventually revered him as the revolutionary of Tenkafuzu. His name was Oda Nobunaga. Tonight, we will gently and slowly recount the life of this man, colored by turmoil, innovation, and solitude. All you need to do is close your eyes and surrender yourself to the flow of sound. Before you know it, you'll be drifting between dream and history. Now then, let the story begin. Chapter 1. The Eccentric of Owari, Childhood and the Truth Behind the Madness. Close your eyes. Let the day slip quietly behind you and allow your mind to drift, not forward, but back. Back through the centuries, across forests and fields, past ancient rivers and wooden rooftops glistening under candlelight. Now we are in Japan. Not the Japan you know today, but the one of warlords and wandering monks, of silent assassins and solemn shrines. It is the year 1534, and in the province of Owari, a child has just been born. His name is Nobunaga. Oda Nobunaga. He was born into the Oda clan, a family of military governors with modest influence in a fractured country. His father, Oda Nobuhide, was a formidable man, strong in battle, shrewd in trade, and always alert to the winds of power. But the child he raised would not walk the paths of his ancestors. Not willingly. From the very start, Nobunaga was different. Those who knew him as a boy described him in hushed tones, with a mix of confusion and unease. He dressed strangely, mixing colors and patterns, often wearing his kimono inside out as if daring the world to question him. He refused formal speech and traditions, preferring crude jokes and sudden laughter in situations where silence was expected. He climbed trees barefoot during formal ceremonies. He played with children from merchant families, something utterly unthinkable for a samurai-born child. He even dared to throw rice cakes at shrine altars, laughing as the priests scolded him. "Utsukamano," they whispered behind folding fans. The Fool of Owari. His family, especially the senior retainers, were embarrassed. His behavior was not merely odd, it was a threat to the clan's honor. They feared his actions would bring shame, or worse, invite ruin upon them all. But to Nobunaga, their worries seemed amusing. He looked upon the solemn rituals of adulthood with something that felt like contempt. To him, they were nothing more than a performance, a costume worn by hollow men to hide their fear. And so he mocked the performance. Boldly, publicly, repeatedly. Yet beneath the antics, something deeper stirred. He was not without intelligence. In fact, his tutors, those who endured his tricks, reported that he learned quickly. He read Chinese classics. He studied maps and records of old battles. And when he listened, truly listened, it was with an intensity that frightened even seasoned warriors. But those moments were rare and always fleeting. The one man who never gave up on him was Hirate Masahide. Masahide had served the Oda family faithfully for years. He was not merely a retainer, but a counselor, a teacher, and in many ways, a second father to Nobunaga. He believed in the boy. He saw not a fool, but a soul that refused to be confined. Masahide tried everything: guidance, discipline, patience. But Nobunaga continued to rebel, not in anger, but with a deliberate, almost artistic form of chaos. He would stare out windows during strategy lessons. He would eat in silence for days, then suddenly burst into a monologue about dreams of fire and steel. He frightened some. he exhausted others. And then, one day, Masahide was gone. He had taken his own life, seppuku, leaving behind a letter addressed to Nobunaga. It is said that in that letter, Masahide wrote, "Your fire will burn the world, my lord. Let it not burn you as well." No one knows exactly how Nobunaga responded. There are no records, no letters, no words spoken aloud. But those who served him claimed that something changed after that day. Not immediately, but undeniably. The foolishness did not disappear, but it began to feel strategic, calculated, chosen. He wore strange clothing, but always in the presence of rivals. He behaved erratically, but only in situations where underestimation worked in his favor. He spoke nonsense until it no longer served him, and then his voice was cold, sharp, commanding. He had turned his madness into theater, and through it he gained power. Those who called him a fool began to question their own understanding. Was he truly a madman, or simply unafraid of masks? Was his Utsuke persona a reflection of his inner chaos, or a smokescreen crafted by someone who saw deeper into the soul of power than any of them could imagine? Even now, centuries later, we cannot be sure. But what is clear is that the boy who laughed at the gods did not fear them. And in a time where fear ruled all, that made him the most dangerous man in the land. Tonight, as you lie in stillness, let your thoughts wander. Imagine a child who sees the world not as it is, but as it could be, if only someone would dare to change it. Imagine the strange boy of Owari, running barefoot through castle halls, smiling as his elders gasp in dismay. Not because he does not understand them, but because he does. And because he is already planning how to take their place. This, then, is how it began. Not with war, not with conquest, but with a boy, a laugh, and a death that opened the door to destiny. Chapter 2: Inheritance and Upheaval. A young lord among vultures. The years pass. The boy grows tall, sharp-eyed, and silent for longer stretches now. Still strange, still unpredictable, but no longer ignored. Not since Masahide's death. It is now 1549. The Oda clan stands at a crossroads. Lord Nobunaga's father has fallen ill, seriously this time. The man who held their fragmented province together through cunning diplomacy and military might is dying. And with his fading strength, the fragile unity of the Oda household begins to unravel. At just 15 years old, Nobunaga is named heir. To the outside world, it is a simple matter of bloodline. But to those within the clan, it is nothing short of madness. They remember the rice cakes, the temple antics, the garish robes. This child, this Utsuke. He would now command the armies, manage alliances, hold the lives of hundreds in his hands. Discontent simmers beneath the surface. Some speak openly. Others conspire in whispers. Among the loudest voices of dissent is Nobunaga's younger brother, Nobuyuki. Polite, well-groomed, conservative. Everything Nobunaga is not. The courtiers adore him. The senior retainers respect him. He bows when expected. He speaks when spoken to. But there is something else about Nobuyuki: ambition. And where ambition meets resentment, rebellion is never far behind. The clan begins to fracture into two camps. On one side, the reformist vanguard, young warriors, drawn to Nobunaga's boldness and vision. On the other, the traditionalists, men who see in Nobuyuki a return to order, to normalcy, to comfort. Meanwhile, Nobunaga remains oddly quiet. He does not issue grand proclamations. He does not chase after approval. Instead, he sharpens his sword. He visits the armories. He studies the ledgers and rice counts. And he waits. Then, in 1551, Nobunaga dies. The old lion passes away in his sleep, leaving his strange son in charge of a clan already on the verge of civil war. Nobunaga's formal succession ceremony is sparsely attended. Even the incense, it is said, was left unattended and scattered carelessly. A sign of disdain, a statement. And Nobunaga, ever watchful, takes note of every insult. But he does not lash out. Not yet. Instead, he begins to act in patterns that, to the untrained eye, look like more eccentricity. He walks the castle grounds alone at night. He refuses to change into formal robes for court audiences. He appears at banquets with half his head shaved, and the other half wildly uncombed. But again, he is watching, marking who flinches, who mocks, who looks away. These are not acts of madness, but of measurement. And soon, the reckoning begins. Nobuyuki makes his move. He rallies a small but influential group of retainers, and launches a rebellion. At first, it seems he may succeed. Even Nobunaga's mother supports Nobuyuki's claim. The situation turns dire. But Nobunaga, calm as ever, prepares his counterstrike. He moves quickly, decisively. He defeats Nobuyuki's forces on the battlefield, but spares his brother's life. It is an act of clemency, some say mercy, others strategy. Months pass. And then, when Nobuyuki begins plotting once more, Nobunaga acts. This time, without hesitation. In the quiet of the night, Nobuyuki is summoned. A quiet room. A short conversation. A flash of steel. And the rebellion ends, not with a war, but with a whisper. The Oda clan belongs to Nobunaga now, entirely. It is a bitter victory. Though his authority is now undisputed, he has lost much. His father, his brother, his mother's love, and perhaps whatever innocence remained. He is still a teenager, yet already the architect of bloodshed, already the target of legends and rumors. Some say he cried that night. Others say he stared at the moon for hours, unmoving. But no one knows for certain. Because from that moment forward, Nobunaga wore his second mask. Not the jester's mask he'd used as a boy, but the face of command. Stoic, unyielding, purposeful. Now, with Owari under control, he turns outward. The world beyond the clan, beyond the castle walls, is broken. 1,000 lords rule 1,000 fiefs. The emperor is powerless. The shogun is weak. The land bleeds. To many, that chaos is frightening. But to Nobunaga, it is opportunity. He begins sending scouts. He invites foreign monks and Jesuits to his court, listening to tales of science, war, and distant gods. He encourages traders to pass freely through Owari's gates, so long as they pay fair taxes and cause no trouble. He starts studying gunpowder. He asks questions, too many some say. But Nobunaga is never satisfied with what is. He is already imagining what could be. As you drift through this quiet evening, let your thoughts linger on that young lord. A boy who could not be tamed, then a youth who could not be swayed. A teenager who chose logic over love, control over comfort, vision over tradition. Oda Nobunaga did not rise like a hero from a tale of honor. He carved his path through suspicion, betrayal, and grief. And yet, somehow, he rose all the same. And this, dear listener, is only the beginning. Chapter 3: The Battle of Okehazama, the Birth of a Legend. By now, Oda Nobunaga had grown into a man. He was not yet 30, and yet already he had shed more blood than most warriors did in a lifetime. He had seized Owari, silenced his rivals, built a stronghold of power, and begun reshaping the very culture of rule. But to the outside world, to the vast web of daimyo, monks and imperial courtiers, he was still a regional warlord. An ambitious one, yes, but not yet a threat to the great powers that carved Japan like a feast. All that would change in a single day. A single battle. One that should have ended in his death, his ruin, his total erasure from history. Instead, it became his coronation. Let us go there now. To Okehazama. It is the summer of 1560. The sun beats down upon the fields of Mikawa and Owari. Rice paddies shimmer like mirrors. The air is thick with moisture and tension. In the east, a giant stirs. Imagawa Yoshimoto, daimyo of Suruga, Totomi and Mikawa, marches westward with a colossal army. He is not just a warrior, he is a lord of lords. A nobleman with a pedigree that rivals even the Ashikaga shoguns. And now, he has turned his eyes toward the capital, Kyoto. The path to the capital, however, runs straight through Owari. Through Nobunaga's land. Through his future. Imagawa's army numbers some 25,000 men. Seasoned troops, well-equipped, proud and confident. They march in tight formations, banners fluttering, drums pounding. They know they cannot be stopped. And on the other side, Nobunaga. With perhaps 2,000 or 3,000 soldiers, some say even fewer. The comparison is laughable. To most daimyo, the response would be simple. Surrender, submit, survive. But Nobunaga is not most daimyo. The night before the battle, he performs a tea ceremony. Yes, a tea ceremony. He invites a few retainers, sits calmly, and sips from a cup of warm matcha. It is said that he spoke little. That he dressed himself in his finest armor after the final sip. That he then bowed to the sky and murmured a single phrase. Tenka Fubu. The world shall be ruled by force. Then he led his men to the edge of history. The Imagawa army has made camp at a place called Okehazama. The hills are lush, the trees thick with summer leaves. And the soldiers relax, confident in their dominance. Some remove their helmets, others begin cooking, even drinking. After all, Oda Nobunaga is just a boy with a few hundred rebels. He will surely retreat, or bow, or die. No one is expecting what comes next. A sudden wind stirs. Clouds gather. And then, the rain. A thunderstorm rolls over the hills like a beast awakened. Visibility drops. The air cracks with lightning. The perfect storm. Quite literally. Nobunaga seizes the moment. He leads his men through hidden paths, creeping along ravines and forest trails. They move like shadows. And then, just as the Imagawa soldiers begin to gather under tarps and trees, the Oda forces charge. They erupt from the woods in a frenzy of screams and steel. A flood of noise, fire and blades. Confusion sweeps the Imagawa camp. Who are they? Where did they come from? How many are there? No one knows. No one can think. Some soldiers scatter, others fight blindly. And in the chaos, Nobunaga's men find their target. Imagawa Yoshimoto himself. He is caught nearly alone, his guards cut down, his tent breached. He draws his sword. He shouts. But it is not enough. Moments later, the head of Imagawa Yoshimoto lies in the grass, wet with storm and blood. The mighty lion of the East is dead. His army, stunned, collapses into panic, and Nobunaga wins. The world changes that day. News spreads like wildfire. The Imagawa have fallen. Oda Nobunaga has defeated them with only a handful of men. Some call it a miracle. Others call it sorcery. A few say it was divine judgment. But all agree. Something extraordinary has happened. And Nobunaga? He returns to Kiyosu Castle, his armor still damp, his sword still unsheathed. He does not throw a banquet. He does not shout from the rooftops. He simply meets his generals, listens to their reports, and plans his next move. He has no time for celebration. Victory is not a finish line. It is a doorway. Let us pause here. Let the sound of rain in your mind continue for a moment. Let it drip slowly, calmly onto the fields of your imagination. Picture a young man barely past his 20s standing beneath a tree as water pours from the leaves. He is breathing slowly. He has just killed a legend. And now he is something more than a man. He is a storm in armor. In the days that follow, Nobunaga consolidates power quickly. Surrounding provinces begin to take him seriously. Alliances shift. Enemies hesitate. One of those watching closely is Tokugawa Ieyasu, then a hostage under the Imagawa. He will soon break free and begin a long, careful friendship with Nobunaga. A friendship that will shape the very future of Japan. Another is Ashikaga Yoshiaki, the last scion of a crumbling shogunate. He will soon come to Nobunaga, begging for restoration. And Nobunaga, ever the pragmatist, will oblige for a while. But those stories come later. For now, remember Okehazama. Remember what it takes to change history. Not thousands of soldiers. Not gold or rank or birthright. But vision, courage, and the willingness to act while others sleep. As you rest tonight, let that idea settle softly in your thoughts. That one man, one single man with clarity and will, can turn the course of nations. And that even in the darkest storm, with the thunder overhead and the mud beneath your feet, you can still move forward. You can still charge. You can still win. Chapter 4: The Road to Power. Tenkafubu and the Broken Shogunate. After the storm of Okehazama faded into memory, a silence followed. But it was not peace. It was the stillness of breath, held before the next great wave. The death of Imagawa Yoshimoto had created a power vacuum across eastern Japan. The soldiers who once marched under his banners now scattered. Some fled to distant provinces. Others changed allegiances. And still, others found themselves kneeling before a new name. Oda Nobunaga. No longer the fool of Owari. Now, the victor of the impossible. The boy who had once defied priests and shamed tradition was now spoken of with awe. But Nobunaga did not slow down. He couldn't. Because he understood something the others didn't. That power is not something you gain once and hold forever. It is something you have to build, piece by piece, and guard with everything you have. And so he built. The first thing he did was look beyond Owari. He had no interest in ruling a single province. He wanted more. More land, more access, more control. His eyes turned to Mino Province, ruled by the Saito clan. It was not an easy place to conquer. Fortified mountains, loyal vassals, and a cruel, erratic young lord named Saito Tatsuoki. But Nobunaga did not rely on brute force. He used marriage. He wed his sister to a member of the Saito family, and slowly began building relationships inside the enemy walls. Then, when the time was right, he struck. By 1567, Nobunaga had seized Inabayama Castle, renaming it Gifu, after the legendary Chinese mountain that once symbolized the seat of heavenly rule. From here he proclaimed a new vision, and with it a new seal. One symbolized Tenkafubu, spread the rule of the realm by force. To many this was blasphemy. The idea that a single man could unify the country by sword, without divine right, without imperial sanction, it was madness. But Nobunaga had never cared for the approval of tradition. He would not wait to be granted power. He would take it. Soon after, opportunity knocked, in the form of a wandering man with noble blood and desperate eyes. His name was Ashikaga Yoshiaki, brother of the murdered shogun, a prince without a court, a puppet in search of hands strong enough to pull his strings. He came to Nobunaga with a simple request. "Help me become shogun. Restore the Ashikaga name." Nobunaga agreed, but not out of loyalty. He saw what others didn't, that the shogunate was a shadow of its former self, that placing a puppet on the throne meant having the throne himself. So in 1568, Nobunaga marched on Kyoto. With precision and little bloodshed, he cleared the capital of rival forces. He installed Yoshiaki as the 15th shogun, and made it abundantly clear that real power lay behind the curtain. For a while it worked. The city quieted. Merchants returned. Temples reopened. And Nobunaga began to rule. Don't stay still forever. Yoshiaki, once grateful, began to chafe under the leash. He reached out in secret to rival clans, Mori, Takeda, Uesugi, asking for help, whispering of Nobunaga's tyranny. And slowly, a great net began to form. The anti-Nobunaga coalition. It stretched from north to south, a spiderweb of warlords, monks, old families, and bitter enemies. They feared Nobunaga. They envied him. And above all, they wanted him stopped. But Nobunaga was not unaware. He responded with relentless campaigns. He isolated enemies one by one. He formed key alliances, most notably with a young, loyal general named Hashiba Hideyoshi. He advanced technology, employing firearms not just in volleys, but in rotating formation. He changed how war was fought in Japan. And in 1573, he expelled Ashikaga Yoshiaki from Kyoto. No more puppets. No more figureheads. The Ashikaga shogunate, which had ruled for over 2 centuries, was gone. Just like that. Now Nobunaga stood alone. No overlord, no emperor behind him. Just the weight of a dream, and the burden of making it real. He moved fast. He abolished tolls and guilds. He opened markets. He encouraged foreign merchants. He welcomed Jesuit missionaries and their books, medicine, and canons. He welcomed the printing press. He imported clocks and glass. To the old guard, this was terrifying. To the common people, it was miraculous. They began to see a different kind of future. One shaped not by inheritance, but by order, by infrastructure, by ideas. He built castles, huge ones. None more grand than Azuchi Castle on the shores of Lake Biwa. It shimmered with gold and tile and innovation. It stood not only as a fortress, but as a symbol, a declaration. Japan is changing, and I am the one changing it. There, he hosted diplomats from Spain and Portugal. He invited monks and poets. He held debates between Buddhist priests and Christian missionaries. He gave voice to perspectives that, just decades before, would have been burned or exiled. He didn't always agree, but he always listened. Because Nobunaga was not a tyrant in the traditional sense. He ruled with iron, yes, but also with curiosity. He wanted answers. He wanted motion. He wanted progress. But progress makes enemies. Old temples grew quiet. The warrior monks of Mount Hiei sharpened their blades. The Iko-Iki sects, the Buddhist peasant militias, began to resist. Old families feared for their legacies. And even Nobunaga's own generals began to whisper. But he pressed on. He believed the only way to unify Japan was to break it first. Break the old systems. Break the hierarchy. Break the notion that birth determined worth. Only through fire, he thought, could something new be forged. So when you close your eyes tonight, and you hear the wind, and you imagine a fire burning on a distant mountain, know that you are hearing the echo of a man who refused to stand still. He could have ruled Owari. He could have been content. But Nobunaga was not born for stillness. He was born for motion. Born for flame. Born for the storm that comes before the dawn. And that storm was just beginning. Chapter 5: Fire on the Mountain. War against faith and the isolation of power. Length. There is a sound that comes before destruction. It is not always loud. Sometimes, it is as quiet as the rustling of monks' robes in the wind. As soft as a prayer whispered in the corners of a candlelit temple. But Oda Nobunaga heard that sound. He recognized it for what it was. Not reverence, not devotion, but resistance. And resistance had no place in the nation he was building. By the mid-1570s, Nobunaga had become more than a warlord. He was a force, a tide reshaping the landscape of Japan. He had expelled the shogun. He had reorganized trade. He had redefined what it meant to rule. But there were those who would not bend. Not to his logic. Not to his muskets. Not even to his gold. And many of them wore robes, not armor. The temples of Mount Hiei had stood for centuries. Atop the slopes northeast of Kyoto, the Enryakuji monastery held more than monks. It held warriors, Sohei, battle-trained devotees who wielded halberds as easily as rosaries. It held lands, taxes, soldiers. It held power. Spiritual power. Economic power. Political power. And it had no interest in surrendering any of it. Worse, Enryakuji began to shelter Nobunaga's enemies. The Asakura clan, the Azai clan, disaffected shogunate loyalists. The monks offered them protection, weapons, refuge. To Nobunaga this was not neutrality. It was defiance. He sent letters. He issued warnings. He even offered mercy, once. But they refused. And so, he chose fire. It was the autumn of 1571. Nobunaga's troops surrounded Mount Hiei in silence. A ring of flame, waiting only for the command. Some say he stood on a distant ridge that night. Others say he did not watch. But this much is certain. The order was given. And the mountain burned. Temples crumbled. Pagodas collapsed. Stone Buddhas split in the heat. And within that inferno, monks, novices, children and mothers, all died together. Witnesses spoke of screams that lasted for hours. Of birds fleeing into smoke. Of a sky turned red with ash. It was not just a battle. It was an erasure. The massacre at Mount Hiei sent shockwaves across the nation. Even Nobunaga's own generals were stunned. Some wept, others resigned. But Nobunaga remained silent. He said only this: "If you allow the roots of poison to remain, the future will rot." Many historians still debate the morality of what happened. But Nobunaga never claimed to be moral. He believed in unity. He believed in clarity. And he believed that peace built on compromise was not peace. It was delay. So he struck again. This time, against the Iko-Iki. The Iko-Iki were not daimyo. They were peasants, farmers, merchants. But they were united under the teachings of Jodo Shinshu, the true Pure Land sect. And they were fearless. Entire families would take up arms, fathers, sons, even grandmothers, fighting in the name of salvation. They rejected samurai rule. They built fortified temples and underground caches. They disrupted tax routes. They inspired uprisings. To many, they were heroes. To Nobunaga, they were insurgents. He campaigned against them for over a decade. The Ishiyama Honganji fortress in Osaka became the symbol of their defiance. An impenetrable city temple, defended by zeal and discipline. Nobunaga laid siege. He cut supply lines. He bribed surrounding warlords. He even built ships, massive floating artillery platforms, to blockade their harbor. Still they resisted. Years passed. Finally, in 1580, the temple surrendered. Another pillar of old Japan had crumbled. But with every victory, something else crumbled too. Connection. Nobunaga was winning, yes, but he was also becoming alone. His generals grew cautious around him. Some feared his anger, others his ambition. He had once been close to Akechi Mitsuhide, a refined and learned man. They shared discussions on poetry, strategy, and philosophy. But as Nobunaga grew more absolute, more demanding, Mitsuhide grew more distant. And then there was Tokugawa Ieyasu, who respected Nobunaga deeply, but also watched him with the eyes of a patient strategist. Even his most loyal retainer, Hashiba Hideyoshi, was beginning to flourish in the shadows. Nobunaga trusted few. He relied on fewer. The higher he climbed, the thinner the air became. And yet, from the outside, he looked invincible. Azuchi Castle gleamed on the lake. Trade flourished. Jesuit priests praised him as a patron of civilization. Europeans compared him to Caesar, to Alexander. But inside, cracks had begun to form. Not in policy. Not in structure. In the soul. Let us pause here. Let the fire fade in your mind. Let the monk's chants dissolve into smoke. Let the silence return. And in that silence, imagine a man standing in a gold-plated castle, surrounded by books and weapons, scrolls and telescopes. Imagine that man walking alone at night, his footsteps echoing on polished stone, his shadow following close behind. That is where we find Nobunaga now, at the peak of his power, and on the edge of the abyss. Chapter 6, The Final Night. Fire, betrayal, and the echo of a dream length. Let us begin in the quietest hour of the night, when the streets are still, when candles have burned low, when even the moon holds its breath. It is the year 1582. Late spring. The world Nobunaga has shaped is nearing completion. Nearly all resistance has been crushed. The Takeda clan, once feared, lies in ruins. The Iko-Iki no longer raise banners. Even the Mori, long distant, are being pushed back. Kyoto is calm. Osaka is booming. Azuchi Castle glows like a jewel. And Nobunaga is tired. He has sent his greatest general, Hashiba Hideyoshi, west to attack the Mori stronghold. It will be the final campaign. After that, peace. Or something like it. He himself has come to Kyoto to rest, staying at a small, elegant temple lodging called Honnoji. It is not a fortress. It is not guarded. Just a few retainers, a small entourage, a calm night. Nobunaga spends the evening drinking tea, talking with a few trusted men, and reviewing letters from the front. He is relaxed. He is unarmored. He is vulnerable. And he does not know that a storm is already galloping toward him. The man who leads that storm is Akechi Mitsuhide. Yes, the same Mitsuhide. Once scholar, diplomat, general. Once trusted. But something in him had turned. Some say it was resentment. Others say humiliation. A whisper, a slight, a broken promise. Or perhaps it was something deeper. The realization that Nobunaga's world had no place for people like him. Whatever the cause, the decision was made. On the night of June 1st, Mitsuhide turned his army away from Hideyoshi's campaign. He marched east. Secretly, quietly, swiftly. And by the time the sun rose on June 2nd, his banners flew at the gates of Honnoji. It is still dark when Nobunaga's attendants wake him. They are breathless, confused, terrified. There are soldiers, they say. Thousands. They carry the crest of Akechi. At first Nobunaga says nothing. Then, quietly, "So it has come." He reaches for his sword, puts on a robe, not armor, looks to the east, where the sky is just beginning to pale. He does not run. He does not scream. Instead, he fights. With a handful of guards, he holds the main hall. Arrow shafts punch through the wooden walls. Smoke begins to rise from the lower corridors. The fire is deliberate. Mitsuhide wants him to burn. But Nobunaga will not give him the satisfaction. In the final moments, he retreats to the inner chamber. He draws his blade. And there, beneath the roof beams blackened by flame, he performs seppuku. An act of defiance. An act of dignity. His attendant, Mori Ranmaru, lights the building. And they both vanish in the blaze. The next day, Kyoto wakes to a rumor. Oda Nobunaga is dead. By nightfall, it is not a rumor. It is fact. Akechi Mitsuhide declares himself ruler. But his reign lasts only 13 days. He is defeated and killed by Hideyoshi, who moves with speed and fury, as if fulfilling Nobunaga's vengeance with fire in his own blood. Tokugawa Ieyasu flees the capital, but he does not forget. And the world begins to shift once more. But tonight, we do not look ahead. Tonight, we remember the man who shaped an era. A man who refused to wait for history. Who tore down the gates and walked through alone. Who believed that order was not inherited, but earned. Who chose ideas over ancestry. Reason over ritual. And fire over silence. He was loved. He was feared. He was hated. He was admired. And in the end, he was alone. But he was never ordinary. So now, in your quiet room, with only your breath and the rhythm of your heart, allow yourself to sit with his memory. Picture him, standing in the garden at Honnoji, watching the sakura trees flutter under starlight, knowing that his time had come. but never flinching. He did not live for comfort. He lived for change. He did not die for glory. He died as he lived, on his own terms. And perhaps, somewhere in the deepest shadows of Kyoto, in the cracks between stone and sky, his steps still echo. A man of war. A man of thought. A man of fire. Oda Nobunaga. Good night. Sleep well. And let the story rest with you. Until we meet again.